Hello, and welcome to Process Mapping for Multiple Measures, hosted by the Center for the Analysis of Post-Secondary Readiness, or CAPR. The goals for this video are to help you plan to implement MMA on your campus, understand how process maps can be used to visualize your MMA placement process for students and staff, and to identify how your MMA placement process will differ from your current placement process. Let's start by defining the term process map. A process map is a visual representation of a procedure or activity that lists each step from start to finish. This slide shows a very simple process map that describes how a parent begins a car trip with their children. Process maps are useful because they display an entire process in a way that is easy to understand. They lay out the activities in a given process as a sequence of steps, and they incorporate the perspectives of different people who will engage in the process by mapping each role in the process. To create a process map, begin by identifying the steps in your enrollment process that are related to placement. Then list the activities involved in these relevant steps. Add in information about the actors and arrange the activities in order of their sequence. Complete a first draft by laying out the full process in a way that organizes everything according to the timing of each step. Remember to take an iterative approach to process mapping. Plan to revisit and revise your process map throughout your implementation. Here's an example of a process map for placement, starting from application submission and ending with registering for classes. It's important to remember that students are not the only people involved in the placement process. Students may receive information from admissions, the testing center, advising, counseling, and other departments. The advising process is outlined on the same timeline as the student process. In this case, an advisor's role begins when they receive placement scores from the testing center and ends when they support the student as they enroll in courses. Every map is built on a set of design choices. The map on this slide, for instance, could have more detail and could have a different starting or stopping place. For this reason, placement process maps will likely look different on different campuses. In practice, process maps can be used to help visualize a process that you hope to refine or change. They can also be used while developing a new process. We suggest that you begin your process mapping journey by laying out your current placement process for students and staff. Then identify changes that are necessary to implement MMA or to improve the process more generally. Revise your current process map to develop a map that shows how placement will look when MMA is implemented. Start drafting your campus's current placement map by recording the relevant steps from the student's perspective. Start from an early point in the process, like when a student applies to the college. Include each step that the student must take, all the way through to enrolling in the course that they have placed into. Think about what happens after that initial step. Consider things like submitting forms, GPA and test scores, and any testing requirements that you may have. At what point in the process do students hear about their placement? What happens during orientation, advising, and registration? You can use computer software, flip charts, sticky notes, or other materials to map out your current placement process. It will probably take more than one sitting to map this out. Work with people from different departments and use the guiding questions in the implementation action plan in the MMA toolkit to map out this process. After mapping the student process, move on to faculty and staff. Map the different staff roles for relevant departments like admissions, registrar, testing, IT, advising or counseling, and any other departments involved in your placement process. As much as possible, align staff's steps with student steps chronologically. It may be helpful to write out your enrollment timeline, including the months or dates when these activities occur. To build momentum, map the staff roles represented in your multiple measures implementation group first, then combine them with a student map and other staff roles to create a campus-wide process map. Once you have a comprehensive representation of your current placement process, You can use it to plan your approach to implementing multiple measures, to guide discussions about placement, to establish a common understanding of your process among stakeholders, and to identify barriers that need to be addressed in order to simplify or improve your placement process. Consider which steps on your process map should stay the same under multiple measures and which must be changed. Note that changing a step might mean adding an entirely new step, editing an existing step, or reordering multiple steps. To decide if a step needs to be changed, think about how to achieve your intermediate objectives and whether the step is creating a barrier for students. For instance, when using MMA, how will students know the importance of submitting placement information in a timely manner? How will they submit the necessary forms? When will students receive their placement communication? Will the structure or information provided during orientation, advising, or registration change from the staff or the student perspective? Will certain staff interact with students at different points in the placement process than they did previously? Will information need to be made available to them by a specific time? Use a marker to tag any steps that will differ from the existing placement process. In this slide, the marker is a dark gray star. Use the map and the markers to inform your MMA implementation plans. Look at the marked steps. Decide how each of these will change. What do you need to do to prepare for these changes? It may take time to address these issues. Brainstorm as a planning group and pull in other colleagues from departments that participate in your placement process. Deliberate on your ideas and decide how to adjust placement processes, remembering that simpler processes are easier to implement and can be just as effective. Develop a post-implementation process map by revising and replacing starred steps on your current process map. Continue to work with staff across departments to refine the revised process map. If you get stuck at any point in this process, review your action plan and the other resources available in the CAPR Multiple Measures Toolkit. Next steps after drafting a process map include planning activities to share your new placement process with the college community, preparing to implement your new placement process, and continuing to build and refine your process map to include lessons learned during implementation. Remember that process mapping is an iterative process. For additional tools that support the use of multiple measures for placement, please visit postsecondaryreadiness.org.